What if you could create more kindness in the world just by being you? Everyone has the potential to create and receive more kindness. What if kindness is more than being nice and compassionate to others? Have you ever considered what having more kindness for you could create in your life? Get ready to learn how the energy of kindness is integral to reducing stress in your life and how it can assist in healing your body. Now, here is the host of Cultivating Kindness with Karen, facilitator of healing, Karen Leslie.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here joining me today for this episode of Cultivating Kindness with Karen. And of course, I'm Karen Leslie, your host. And we're here today, as always, on the Inspired Choices Network, where you can find so many amazing different hosts and all kinds of different topics that you can learn from, enjoy, laugh, and giggle with. We have everything here. And laugh and giggle might be part of what we end up with today as well. I had a very strong message very early on in February that I was to do a show about play. And I was sitting there and going, seriously? That's not a word that's in my vocabulary. And as those of you who follow my show know, I work a lot with oracle cards. I get a lot of messages for types of shows to have and content to be there for you. And so I knew not to question that we were going to talk about play one day. So I left it for 2 or 3 days. And then all of a sudden, I can't remember what I was doing, but I almost blurted it out. And I was with other people and I almost said, "Oh, Cathy Belgrave." And I'm just like, now I know how I can do this show. So we have a wonderful guest with us today, whose name is Cathy Belgrave. And Cathy and I have known each other for many years. We met in high school. We've stayed in touch ever since. And even our birthdays are only 10 days apart. Like there's a lot of similarities and things in our lives with each other. And so let me give you a little bit of background on Cathy, and then we can get into more of our program. So Cathy is a parent, elementary teacher, and an early childhood education certified wonder-led educator. And for those that were with me last week, I remember saying to her that she's a wonder-led educator, and that just lit me up. So I'm excited to learn more about that today. Cathy has been working with children for over 25 years in a variety of settings and is the founder of Creative Studio for Children. She currently offers workshops to preschool teachers and teaches preschool and elementary play-based programs in Vancouver. When not teaching, Cathy loves to be outside in nature and can be found communing with the trees in the forest or watching a sunset. And Cathy posts amazing pictures of sunset when I watch her social media. So welcome, Cathy. I'm so excited to have you here with me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited too for this conversation. Yeah.
There's so much about play that, truthfully, I don't understand, which is why I reached out to you, because I know that the aspect of play, the element of play, and helping children and, adults to be able to learn how to play, I mean, that's your stomping ground. Like, that's your expertise. And I know there's a lot that I'll be able to gain from this. I was thinking a little bit, just a little earlier today, and I was like, play, do I actually feel I have anything to contribute to today? I didn't come up with a lot, although I have questions and curiosity, and that is an element of play.
Mm-hmm.
My childhood, and I shared this with Cathy a little bit beforehand, but just for those of you who are here with us today, I don't remember playing much. I remember a little bit, but I also remember that my play was, if I got too spontaneous or if I got too exaggerated with my play, or didn't sort of fit into certain boundaries with it, it was shut down pretty clearly. And so when I started having my children, it was like, oh no, how am I going to play with them? And so I learned from other new mothers, and I watched my kids and tried to follow along with, okay, so what are they just naturally doing? And so it started a little bit of a journey with play. And then as I got older, I lost more of it. Now, Cathy saw a little bit of it when we were in university together because we were actually roommates as well. And then when I got into corporate world, it was like, oh no, I need to pull this back in and not be playful and not be this silly person anymore. Because I was traveling across Canada, like I needed to be serious. And I was like, in hindsight. But anyways, it doesn't matter. So I guess, Cathy, what I'd like to ask you first is, like, so what does play mean to you? Because I have such a limited understanding of it.
Yeah. So I would start off by saying, play is a very integral part of what makes us human. Like it is a natural element of who we are. And just listening to, your description of your journey with it, it's like part of it is then reconnecting with that spontaneity within us all. And so I think of it like when you think of children and babies, we're all trying to find our place in the world. We're all trying to find a sense of belonging. And if you watch babies grow, you'll see, that's what they're doing. They're trying to figure out, where they're positioned in the world. And they're, over time making purposeful action, interacting with people, and that just keeps going. And so, when you look at school age children and their ability to play, same thing, they're trying to find out, where they fit in. And so play too, I would say is there's some elements to authentic play. So one of them is intrinsically motivated. So a person is playing because they actually want to, whatever the activity is, they're choosing it. So then it becomes self-motivated, self-sustaining. So they want to keep it going. If you watch children playing, you'll see they may have conflict, but what binds them together is they want the play to keep going.
Right.
So they'll compromise and they'll adjust and just different things like that. They have rules, some of those rules are unspoken, and also the rules are changeable. Play offers creativity and the use of imagination. And also with play, there's flow. There's that state of just being, and there's no stress in play. There's no known outcome.
I remember feeling so stressed.
There's flow.
Oh, that's so good.
And so for adults, it becomes a state of mind. So
true.
play is different for different people.
When you were talking about babies, I think that is one time when, as an adult, we will let ourselves actually play in a way that we won't normally allow. Like we make those silly faces, we change our voice, I don't know, we did. It shocked me as an adult when some of my friends started having kids, and I was watching people with the children, with these newborns or little people, and how they behaved. And I never held a child till I had my own. So even when my friends had children, I was like, I don't know about this. But that is probably one time when I can remember that even though I was worried about judgment from the other adults around, that I did allow myself to just follow the child, be that silly, make those noises, and really be more spontaneous being with them.
Yeah. And so you're touching on a point of where we get disconnected, right? We are taught certain ways to be, and our culture tells us what's acceptable. And so that band of what's acceptable can be very narrow. And so that spontaneity isn't always cultivated, and that creativity, and you see that in school, the way school is set up. It's very curriculum driven. So it's about learning these things. And there's not a lot of room for the child to, find their own way with it. Some latitude, but not enough, I would say.
Yeah, I could see that being really Very, very true. Even more so now, I think, than when perhaps our children were in school. And, well, and mine, as you know, didn't go to school till grade 8. I homeschooled all the boys until that age group. And homeschooled, very loose term, extremely loose term, because really I just let them play. And I just watched them. And I mean, I brought in elements of learning because, of course, they needed to learn to read, and they needed to learn, that 1 + 3 did equal 4 and things like this. But it was done very differently, and differently for each one of my 3 sons as well, which was kind of cool when I look back on it. So I did have some understanding for them at that time, which was really cool. And I want to just quickly bring in here too, for those, for the people who regularly watch the show, you know about the oracle cards and how I work with them. And I actually went back and looked today, Cathy. It was February 10th that I wrote to you and said, would you help me with this show? So here it is now. So back in February, when I was thinking about this, I pulled 2 cards, and one's always for myself. And the card then was about healing scars from the past for me, and letting go and letting life flow. And that's when you talked about flow with play as one of the elements of it, I was like, oh, yes. Okay. And I can see how being allowed to just freely play as a child, and then, hopefully for even adults, but as a child, I could see how it prevents some of those scars, like how the card's speaking to me, because my play was so regulated. So that created difficulties for me. But if you just, and as you say, if you watch children play, it flows from one activity to another, and there may be a disruption, but then they get back to it again so easily. And so I can see how that would really add to their development, to their overall happiness, and just joy of life, right?
Totally. Yes. Yes. And so one of the mistakes I would say our culture makes is thinking that nothing is happening during play.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah. We talk about play as the break from work. And so there's this underlying implication that when you play, nothing's going on. And so, but when children play, that is the way they're learning best. They're able to take risk, and sometimes that's physical risk, sometimes that's social, emotional risk. They're learning a lot of social skills, how to be with other children, how to make decisions, how to solve conflict, how to make up rules, how to role play, when you watch kids, being pretending to be parents.
Or shopping or doing whatever, right?
All the different things. Yeah. And so if as adults, we just step back and trust that children know what they're doing. And, again, it comes back to them wanting to be part of the world. So they're, thinking, they're problem solving, they're doing all kinds of things. And so they're learning. And so
that's very cool.
If we stand back and allow that and watch and see what are they actually trying to figure out. So, for example, if we're watching some, preschool children play with blocks and they're building towers and the blocks keep falling over, some of maybe what they're learning is that falling over part, or you'll see them knock them over. So they're playing around with destruction. What's it mean to destroy something? Then maybe they want their building to stay up. And so then they're figuring out stability. And if we hang back and watch and think of ourselves more as almost researchers, if you will, and then seeing what they're working with and talking with them at certain points, find out what they're thinking, then we know what to offer them next. So, and sometimes it doesn't have to be verbal. It's like, oh, stability. So then we're going to offer these materials and just slide them in, and they just keep on playing. Other times it's conversations with them and what they're noticing. And sometimes in education, we call it scaffolding, giving them some information to help them bridge over to the next level of learning for what they're interested in. Because that's another thing about play. It's driven by their interest. So again, wanting to figure out how this thing works, how the world works, essentially, is what they're sorting out for themselves.
Oh, that's so cool, right? That really makes sense when I think about it. And it is a way to maneuver the world, and I guess also help them find their place in it and how they're figuring it all out. When I first said I was going to homeschool my eldest son at that time, one of a family members said to me, or said to him, sorry, but you can't have recess if you're not at school. And I remember thinking, what? And that was one of the reasons that he chose to go. He did go for 2 weeks. And then I saw such a shift in him that I pulled him out. But he was convinced that I couldn't give him recess. And then when he got to recess, he hated it. He just saw so many children being unkind to each other in large groups. And it was overwhelming. I thought that was a grandparent's reason, is that I couldn't give him recess. So that's why he should be going to school. And I just thought, you don't understand school very well, or play and things, as to how it all works. And the way you're describing the role of play and what it gives a child, I can actually look back and see how it was a benefit to my boys. And I am so appreciative of that gift that you just gave me, because there were times when I was worried that letting them just play was not being a responsible parent. And
yeah.
right, because it's so frowned on. And I mean, we rent where we're currently living, and our landlord was here one day with his wife and his daughter, and I had all my jewelry supplies out making some bracelets, and the young girl was fascinated. And I just said, well, can she make one? I'm happy for her to make one. And they were both against it because it was a frivolous activity, and she was never allowed to do something like that. So I pushed, to be honest, and we sat and made a bracelet. And she expressed to her parents, because she told me later that she would like to make more, and she wasn't allowed to. That one bracelet was it. It was an activity that was frivolous, had no contribution towards her education and intelligence.
It's a misunderstanding of what play is, of thinking that nothing is happening during play, when actually so much is happening. And for me, one of the crucial things is connection with others and relationship. And so by building that relationship, the child is building their own confidence. It's that reciprocity of relationship. And that's a thing that, adults have. It's tricky for adults, because we're taught that, children are a certain way, and that they're not our equals. And that in some ways they're an empty vessel that we need to fill with knowledge and information about how to be in the world. But I would say children have a lot of knowing and understanding, just by being in the world. They have experience, and they have knowledge, and they have knowledge at an age appropriate level. And so, yes, being the adult, our knowledge is different. I wouldn't say it's better, it's different. And the child is going to learn in their own way, and our job is to support that learning and provide those bridges to the next levels of learning.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to interrupt you here for a second, Cathy. We need to go for our first break, and I tend to get very caught up in conversation, so I got to keep an eye on this. So I want to thank everyone for being here with Cathy Belgrave and myself. We're here talking about play on Cultivating Kindness with Karen. And we're going to go for a short break. I'm hoping you will all join us when we come back, because we're going to look at more of what is that intelligence that play brings to the children, and what can we actually learn from our kids is something I'd love to explore when we come back after this, these couple of commercials. So stay with us. Maybe in the meantime, get up, move around, play a little bit, and we'll be with you just in a couple of minutes. Thanks, everybody.
We all have different experiences with and definitions of kindness. These experiences and beliefs about kindness have influenced who we are today and how we see the world. The universe is always listening. So what are you telling the universe today? Tune in to Cultivating Kindness with Karen each week as Karen guides you to understanding how each choice you are making is either keeping you stuck or opening up the energy of empowerment for you. Listen to Cultivating Kindness with Karen, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time, 12 p.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Cultivating Kindness with Karen. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Karen@KarenLeslie.ca. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm so glad you're here today with myself, Karen Leslie, and my wonderful friend and guest, Cathy Belgrave. We're talking about play, and already just from the first segment, and if you're just joining us now, please go back and listen to the first part, because there's been mic drops that Cathy has given us and how we can look at play. And I really want to talk more about what the play does. And you're talking about children's intelligence and what it offers them and takes them to the next level. And I'd never thought about it that way. And yet, watching my children and other children, and we belong to a very large homeschooling group. So we were with like a lot of kids. Actually, and what was so cool about that was they were all different ages. Mm-hmm. And watching the interaction with that was really, really actually fascinating, how they built the relationships, like you were saying, and the learning that happened when some of the older children would intervene sometimes when things got a little out of hand. But I'd never thought of just that intelligence building and that knowledge aspect that was there through all of that. I don't know. I'm lost for words. I don't know what else you can add to that for me, but I would love to talk about it more.
Yes. So that scenario you're describing with the older children, so rich and so much going on in those kinds of groupings, because the younger children, just by watching how those older children are in the world and what they're playing and how they're choosing to explore is teaching, showing, and then by interacting, there may be some, let's use the block building example again. That older child may already know how to make it more stable, and they're just going to show them, this is what you do. And then they carry on. And so that's all knowledge building. And so all of those experiences are, becoming part of the child. And we look at the brain science of it, it's like building neural pathways, and repetition of certain play activities, or any play activity, is like strengthening those neural pathways. And so,
so that's why sometimes a child will get so fixated on a certain activity then.
Yeah. I mean, you think of the child when they're, learning how to feed themselves, and then they drop their spoon on the floor. And then it's like, whoa, first time. And then you give it back to them, and then they throw it on the floor repeatedly. So they're learning like, oh, I actually can have an effect in this world. And I'm doing it right now by dropping my spoon on the floor. And so every time they're seeing what happens, is the same thing going to happen over and over and over. And so then they're strengthening that neural pathway, and that stays with them. And then, as they grow and explore more, they're building really complex networks of pathways. And it affects how they feel about themselves. It affects their identity. Just backing up a little bit, to the group scenario, one of the motivating forces for play is wonder and curiosity, wonder about the world, like being in awe of how things work, how the world is put together. And it can be very simple things that as adults we can overlook. I think of an example in one of my preschool programs where I put erasers out. And this one child knew about erasers and had never used one. And he spent so much time just writing on his page and erasing, writing on his page and erasing, like full of wonder and curiosity of this thing we call an eraser. And it's so easy to dismiss that and think, oh, you're not focused, or you're making a mess, or have some sort of judgment. When if we kind of step back and just try and see it through the eyes of the child, what could they be thinking about? We never know, really. We make assumptions and decisions, but often we never know. And when you talk to the child, sometimes they can tell us, but sometimes they don't even know. It's just part of this bigger process that's going on. And so if we can give them that time to learn through play, and follow those wonders and curiosities, giving them the time to experiment and build their own theories, and then again taking it to the next level, growing and developing, and scaffolding when appropriate, and then they're forming their own views and building confidence. They're become really innovative learners. Oftentimes, again, that empty vessel model, or even there's another kind of view of the child where we think, okay, they're not empty vessels. They have resources within them, but it requires us as the adult to help them access those resources. And so that's when, we, again, I'll use the eraser example. That would be the educator seeing what's going on and feeling like, oh, I need to step in and show this child how the eraser works.
I find, you're making me realize too, there are times when I was so bored playing the same game or the same thing over and over again with my kids. And I'm glad I didn't take the perspective that I had to change the activity because of my boredom. Because now I see, no, I'm not maybe technically clearly, but I have an idea now as to the importance of still letting them play a certain way until they were finished playing with it.
Yeah.
The eraser is such a brilliant example. And I could think of so many times and people I know that would have, well, like one of the grandparents in particular, who would have thought this was just total rubbish and judged the child for doing it, and then saying, like, stop, you're going to put a hole in the paper. Well, like, so what? Who cares if they erase to the point where we get a hole in the paper? Then they figure out they can put a hole in the paper, right? Like, it's.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's all part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are in a culture that is very based in right, wrong,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
bad, right? So we can get caught up in these ideas of what the right way to do something is. And so we interrupt process when we do that. But learning is a process. And so acknowledging, where anyone is on the process, it's not wrong. It's just that's where they are in the process. And trusting that development and supporting that development without interfering.
Okay. Because I ignored our timing earlier, we need to go to our second break already, Cathy. Sorry. But I really would like to come back to trusting the process after our break, because I think that that's so integral, because I think a lot of parents or people in general, we've lost the trust in play because play has changed so much over the last 30, 40, 70 years. And yeah, so let's come back to that, trusting that process. So as I said, we're having to head to our break. Sorry, this segment was so long, but I am just thoroughly loving my conversation with Cathy Belgrave. I hope you are as well. So please come back. We will be back just a couple of minutes and carry on this fascinating conversation. And I hope you're learning as much as I'm learning. All right, everybody, we'll see you after the break. Thanks.
We all have different experiences with and definitions of kindness. These experiences and beliefs about kindness have influenced who we are today and how we see the world. The universe is always listening. So what are you telling the universe today? Tune in to Cultivating Kindness with Karen each week as Karen guides you to understanding how each choice you are making is either keeping you stuck or opening up the energy of empowerment for you. Listen to Cultivating Kindness with Karen, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time, 12 p.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Cultivating Kindness with Karen. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Karen@KarenLeslie.ca. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm so glad you're here with us today with myself, Karen Leslie, and Cathy Belgrave. We are having, what I'm finding anyways, a really interesting conversation about play. And if you have questions or if anything we say kind of stirs you a little bit, either way, positive, negative, by all means, reach out to me. You can send me an email, as you just heard, Karen@KarenLeslie.ca. And Leslie is spelled Leslie, no Y. And I get that a lot. But anyways, that's okay. And you can also follow me on all different forms of social media platforms, and we can connect that way as well through messages and have conversations together. As always, I try to bring to you new information, new ideas, helping you think out of the box a little bit. And I know that sometimes I'll say things that people think are right, and other times people are going to think it's wrong. And if you struggle with that, go back to a previous episode where I talked about what if you were never right and what if you were never wrong, because it's a wonderful place to be. And I think, Cathy, from what you were saying just before our break, that we can view play as being wrong, or we can view these activities from such a place of judgment, and how much that strips away from both the child and the person that has that point of view. It just, it's not kind. Everything in here on the show, it's all about kindness, and that is not playing with kindness.
Yeah. And sometimes, children do things that in their play that they do need a little bit of guidance, like let's say throwing blocks around the room. And so sometimes it's about the adult creating, what in education we call yes spaces. And so not saying what you're doing is wrong. It's like, oh, I'm witnessing this child throwing. They have the urge to throw. So we can maybe go outside. They're wanting big body movement. So maybe we can go outside, or if I can't go outside, maybe we create a space. So, and including the children in the decision making, like, hey, I see you want to throw. Can we make a space in the room? But every time you throw, you're disrupting this group over here that are, building with Lego or playing house or whatever they're doing. So where can we find this space for you to throw? And having the child participate in that decision making, and then what to throw. One of the children, I had this exact example in one of my classes. And so what we did is we took recycled paper and made balls and wrapped tape around the balls. And so that brought this whole other level of fascination with the tape. And again, trusting the child to use the tape in whatever way they're going to use. And so, tape is a tricky, fine motor thing for some children, but giving them that space to experiment and not, stepping outside of that right, wrong, and seeing like, okay, they're in process, and maybe offering like a couple tips on what they could try for them to help their own process. And so then we had all these paper balls, and this child created a game. Off in the chosen area, and kind of threw to their heart's content. And then other children saw this going on and came over and wanted to join in. And so now they're into their spontaneous, authentic play. They're all motivated in this activity. They're all choosing for themselves, not an adult directing. They're sustaining it for as long as they want, because another aspect of play is also to quit when you want. They're sorting out their rules. They're using their imagination and creativity, because you'll watch children change the rules, to accommodate whatever their need is. And they're trying to sustain the play. And so that's another area as adults, we can tend to want to intervene of like, well, wait a minute, you're changing the rules. That's not okay. But for the children, it's totally okay. They're just kind of in process with it. And the game they started with may evolve into something quite different. And most times the group is okay with it.
I keep going back to watching my kids and then the homeschooling group, and I can so see examples of what you're saying. But I love where you are with the children, like to recognize that this child wanted, how did you say it? Large body movement or big body movement? I forget the wording you said. Sorry, I was really listening to everything. And not to go into, hey, it's wrong to throw something, but you recognize a need, a shift in that child, instead of stopping that and then forcing them to suppress that need. And I mean, it just is making my mind go in circles. Like what you do is brilliant. Like those children are so fortunate to have people like you and others educated like you are, that, I know they're all over the world, but to find you is such a gift.
Yeah. And I would say, the play-based learning is really quite a movement. And play-based educators would like to see play like throughout the entire education system, not just preschool. It needs to be in elementary school. It needs to be in high school. So much research out there around how children learn, and they learn through experience, they learn through movement, they learn through connection with others, these interactions, they learn how to take reasonable risk. So then later as teenagers, they're able to make choices around risk. Sometimes we get really caught up in the academics and
Yeah.
worry, like any parent isn't trying to suppress their child. They're concerned. They want their child to flourish and do well. And we live in a culture that is very scientific and values academics. And to a sometimes limiting point, there needs to be a balance. And, the way school is set up right now of having big groups of children sitting for extended periods of time, like none of that is supported by research. Same as recess being 15 minutes, the research on children and play says that children need 45 minutes to an hour and a half to get into their play.
Wow. They don't even get that as a lunch break, let alone a break during the day for play.
No.
And I think we have mistakenly looked at phys ed, or whatever it's called now, as being the time for them to play. But phys ed is so regulated. It's full of do's and don'ts, and that's wrong, and comparison and competition, and it's the opposite of everything that I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, well, it's not chosen by the child.
It's so not. That's right. You're right. It's not chosen by them.
We're doing volleyball unit right now, and this is how you serve, and so there's rules, and that's all fine, but it's not chosen. Right?
It's not. You're right. And so those that love volleyball will look forward to it, and those that would really rather not be anywhere on a court for any type of sport like that will be very uncomfortable.
What happens to those who don't like physical activity?
Yeah, right. I had one of those in my family. That wasn't his thing. So, and that needed to, and in our family, we honored that, but that was easy for us to do here. But it was more of a challenge when the school system became part of his life.
Yeah. The curriculum is really at the center, because there isn't choice for teachers either,
No, actually, and I feel that's I feel like we don't recognize that enough or give them enough support, because they're told what needs to happen and how the day is supposed to run. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect that if a teacher was given full reign as to how her day or his day was going to go with the students that they have, it would look very different.
Yeah. Yes. Even thinking about school, I think for school, it's really reaching an understanding of what it actually is, and just being very neutral with what it is and the parameters under which it operates, and not expecting other things from it. So questions that I've asked in the past is like, is it reasonable to have a class of 25-year-olds in kindergarten, or 25 grade 4s, and expect them all to get along, or expect them all to be interested in whatever curriculum strand is being taught at the same time, and to move as this big group through. So, and questions I had when I was a classroom teacher is like, who is to say whether you're hitting grade level or not? You have very defined assessments and ways of measuring that, and markers of what that is, but what does that actually mean? What happens to the child that is developmentally not there yet?
Well, I was just thinking that, and we need to go to another break. Can you believe it? This time is passing so quickly. But when you were speaking, I was thinking about myself personally. I I'd never understood why, but I always knew I was a little different in some ways. But now, through my own research and talking with people, I recognize that I have what people call now a neurodivergent brain.
Mhm.
And there's more and more people whose brains function in this different manner. And so I get why I struggled in certain ways in school, and that I got through it all. And yeah, I got through 3 years of university. I couldn't tolerate staying longer like you did. I was like, get me out of here because it was so tough. The structure and the way we look at play and how activities in general, even if they're not play-based activities, and that the neurodivergent brain, which, these children are showing up more and more with this different aptitudes and strengths and capacities that we don't always see as being those positive words.
Mhm.
All right, so we're going to go for our break, and maybe we can continue this conversation a little bit more, Cathy, in our last segment. Oh my goodness. So thank you everyone for being here with us on Cultivating Kindness with Karen. I'm Karen Leslie, your host, and you're here on the Inspired Choices Network. So again, on this break, maybe get up, move around, do something kind of fun for yourself, and come on back and carry on this conversation with myself and my guest, Cathy Belgrave. Okay, we'll see you soon, people. Bye.
We all have different experiences with and definitions of kindness. These experiences and beliefs about kindness have influenced who we are today and how we see the world. The universe is always listening. So what are you telling the universe today? Tune in to Cultivating Kindness with Karen each week as Karen guides you to understanding how each choice you are making is either keeping you stuck or opening up the energy of empowerment for you. Listen to Cultivating Kindness with Karen, Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central Time, 12 p.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Cultivating Kindness with Karen. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Karen@KarenLeslie.ca. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being here with Cathy Belgrave and myself. Cultivating Kindness with Karen has been a little over 3 months now on air on the Inspired Choices Network. When I had this idea to do this show, I really thought it was going to be sharing information with you, with the people who listen, either on audio or actually watch us on TV, and helping you to explore where you're at and to learn new things for yourself. But every week, and so much today, I realize I think I'm doing this show for me. I'm learning so much about myself and receiving so much healing from being here. And I'm so grateful, Cathy, to you for everything that you're bringing forward for all of us, people now here listening and those in the future, about the importance of play. And, as we were saying before the break, the different ways in which our children think now and the prevalence for these differences, like I see play as being even more. Can it be more important? Like it just really feels like it needs to be there.
Yes, especially post-COVID. Yeah.
Yes.
So many restrictions, and children didn't have a chance to play in the way that they could be close and interacting in those intimate ways. Yeah. I had a thought as you were talking, and now it's gone.
I experience that all the time.
I got distracted with the whole COVID thing, so maybe I'll just talk about that a little bit. But
Sure.
I recently taught during spring break, and I taught a morning preschool class, and I taught an afternoon creative writing and art class. What I noticed and so the creative writing and art class was for ages 8 to 12, and
Okay.
it was 4 and 5-year-olds. What I noticed that both groups had in common was their need for social contact, their need to play, the 4-year-olds, to just have that freedom to explore. And I found myself just letting go of so many things that I had intended to like invite them into explorations about in certain art activities and whatnot, and just really put out the blocks. The kitchen was set up, just all these different things, and just allowed them to move freely and explore and interact. And with that particular group, what I noticed is that they needed support in solving conflict. They didn't quite have the language to speak for themselves. And so helping them find the words to let another person know how they were feeling when someone grabbed something away from them and whatnot. With the school age children, they wanted to hang out and talk and play around with ideas and push story ideas to the absolute limit of ridiculous. And
Nice.
just holding a space to give them that opportunity to explore those, what are the limits of a story. But also I'm noticing they're like feeding off each other. They're laughing at the ridiculousness of what they're creating, just hanging out. For others, I notice with the art component, what their childhood is like. And you mentioned earlier in the show that it's different than what you and I grew up in.
Yeah.
And I saw, one child in their story writing telling me, they were writing about a school shooting.
Oh my.
Another child, through his doodling, showed me his understanding of the war between Russia and the Ukraine. And so
Oh
these
wow.
are really complex, potent things that are happening in children's lives and affecting them. And they need a space to talk about them and work it out amongst each other, but at times with an adult as well. And so that adult has to be able to enter into that conversation outside of a right wrong, outside of I'm going to correct your perception, but be in flow and be part of the conversation. And so it's letting go of some of these images we have of children that they need us to tell them the right way of things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow, that is so powerful, Cathy. I'm really glad you shared that, actually, because yeah.
So, after I experienced that, because I had all these ideas around, fun things to offer them in their writing, and it became a space of conversation and exploration on their own, with me joining in conversations from time to time, and went home thinking, wow, they're just shouldering so much. But then I thought of, when you and I were growing up and Vietnam War was on. And so
Yeah, but it didn't have the same publicity. We didn't see the war.
Exactly.
We heard about it.
Exactly. The most we saw, or the most I saw, was, the front page of the Globe and Mail.
Yeah.
And the photo, or maybe you'd hear a strand on the radio, and, as a kid, we didn't watch the news.
No, we didn't have that global. But Cathy, I'm sorry, we have 30 seconds left. So I want to say deeply from my heart, thank you so much for being here. And I've learned so much, and I hope all of our viewers have as well. You're a brilliant woman, and I'm so glad you're in the lives of all of these children. And I hope all of you will come back next week and you will be part of our show. Next week, we are talking about self-admiration. And as always, I am sending you waves of kindness and wishing you a blessed day. And I look forward to sharing with you again next week.
Thank you for listening to Cultivating Kindness with Karen. Karen Leslie returns Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can find Karen at karenleslie.ca and follow her on social media. Until next Wednesday, Karen is sending you waves of kindness for a fabulous week. Remember, it's only you who has the power to be and receive the kindness required to change your life.